Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. And after a short break, summer period, lots of stuff going on in life, we are back with We're Afraid of the Dark. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Talk through slash review. We're up to season three, starting season three with episode number one, The Tale of the Midnight Ride, written by Darren Cotania and directed by DJ McHale. It all changed to a degree within the Midnight Society, as this episode introduces us to a brand new member of the Midnight Society, Gary's little brother, Tucker, because of course, two members of the cast have exited the show. We'll get into that in a little bit, but for now, Gary's little brother Tucker is the new member. And just to recap, the cast, Midnight Society now looks like this right now. We've Daniel DeSanto as Tucker. That is the new member. We've got Ross Hull as Gary, Jodie Resta as Kiki, Rain Pierre Cool as Betty Ann, and Jason Alasharian as Frank. If you go back all the way to season one, that means now there's only three original members left. And it's
Mm,
Gary, Kiki, and Betty Ann. Because remember, Frank was new, being introduced at the start of season one.
Yeah, I thought this was a nice little opening, paid homage to the fallen storytellers, and a good quick way of introducing Tucker as well.
I do agree with him on that. And our story cast, before we get into the actual meat of it, our story cast sees Tiggy Swanson as Ian Matthews, Rachel Wilson as Katie, Patrick Gardner as Brad, Francois Gautier as the Headless Horseman, and Arthur Holden as Ichabod Crane. Now, if you've heard those names and go, wait, this is that story. Yes, I was as surprised as you because the Tale of the Midnight Ride does not imply that at all. And then when I heard the names or like names were spoken, I groaned and went, "You are kidding me!" Because I'm going to put this out here right now, folks. I generally don't like the story. I don't care for the original. I don't care for any story versions of it I've seen. I don't like the Headless Horseman Ichabod Crane tale, the tale of Sleepy Hollow. I just don't.
Mm. Yeah, I literally took a note down saying that I didn't feel overly excited over the prospect of a retelling of the Sleepy Hollow story. But I thought it did make sense to do it. I guess it's sort of a traditional horror tale, and these shows always kind of touch on the more traditional stories. So I'm surprised we haven't seen it before now, basically.
I think, yeah, that's a good point. I think it is very much a campfire tale. This is Tucker's first story, and at the beginning of the episode, Gary announces, in a very, as you said, a very well done way, that simply put, Kirsten and David's families have moved away. And I thought, with the choice of music and the sort of matter of fact way he states it, I thought, what a great simple way to sort of sum up childhood friendships.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I liked it.
Yeah. According to an interview with DJ McHale, Nathaniel Moreau, played David, was terminated due to salary disputes.
Well, that's funny. I think I mentioned before, I'd love to know how much they were getting generally paid to do these roles, but that's quite amusing. I wonder what the dispute was and over how much, you know?
Indeed, indeed. Whereas Rachel Blanchard, who played Kirsten, called him personally and said, I just don't want to do the show anymore.
Yeah.
And after this episode, David and Kirsten are never mentioned again. So that is literally them being erased from it completely. And last interesting fact, this is the only episode where an actual location, a real location, is used, e.g. Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Hmm.
Okay, we begin with Gary announcing to the rest of the Minute Society that friends come and friends go. Two members, David and Kirsten, have left because both their families moved away. They won't hear any more stories from them, but they'll always be a part of the Midnight Society. They'll be greatly missed and everyone looks sad. The only thing that made me laugh was Gary is wearing a suit, what looks like funeral attire. Calm down, you freaking nerd. But that leaves room for two new members, folks, and we'll get into the second member further down the line. But for now, Betty Ann mentions her friend Sam wants to join, but needs time to make her first story. Love that. That creates a sort of moving world where, like,
Hmm.
it's not just episode by episode. It suggests that we've got an overarching thing here that we will come back to this later.
Yeah. We don't get many you get little breadcrumbs sometimes about what's happening outside of the Midnight Society and the process that goes into creating these stories and the time and stuff like that. So it's nice to get a little thing every now and then.
Agreed. Gary has one too, and then Gary's little brother Tucker is revealed. The others are not impressed, and Tucker is ready to rock. He's basically younger than the rest, and he's got a mouth in him. He's a bit cheeky, which I thought was weird because technically we all kind of have that character with Frank.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. Frank might speak to the director as well and be like, that's kind of my character, kind of stepping on what I do, taking all Frank's lines, man.
I thought that as well, actually. Later on, I think it gets really worse. I think there's a point where I realized, like a couple of episodes down the line, folks, where I realized, oh, like Frank's been pushed to the back.
Don't really need you anymore, Frank.
Well, Gary, look, they don't want Tucker in it. And Gary's basically, look, I have no choice. He either has to bring him or he can't come anymore. And I thought that was a fascinating insight into Gary and Tucker's parents. They've basically gone, oh my God, one night a week, we get rid of Gary all night and we get the place to ourselves. What if we could get rid of Tucker and we could have a night to ourselves alone? They all take that, take Tucker. Otherwise, that's the end of it for all of you. Love the parents thinking.
Brilliant.
So, of course, they end up agreeing to give Tucker a chance. Tucker explains that people make up their own ghost stories all the time. However, there are some ghost stories that have been around for so long that it makes you wonder if they might not be made up. His story is about a famous ghost and a legend so popular it won't die. Fair enough. I actually went, all right, fair enough. At least you're acknowledging the fact that this isn't a fresh story. You are just retelling a classic.
Yeah.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. This is the tale of the Midnight Ride. Yes, so it's a version of the Headless Horseman story, and it begins with Tucker briefly recanting a Headless Horseman legend. He was a soldier who had his head blown off by a cannonball. Night after night, his ghost rides through the woods of Sleepy Hollow, searching for a new head to claim as his new one. Then one year on Halloween night, the town's new schoolmaster, Ichabod Crane, took a wrong turn in the woods and was chased down by the evil horsemen. Ichabod rode like crazy to get to the Bridge of Souls, as the Headless Horseman can't cross it. However, Ichabod didn't make it and the horseman got him. And legend now says that on Halloween night, the ghost of the horseman and Ichabod Crane return to Sleepy Hollow to ride again. How familiar are you with this story overall? Or does it come from more like modern adaptations?
Yeah, my only knowledge surrounding it would be from the Tim Burton movie. That's I mean, other than that, yeah, I think that might be the first time. Obviously, I'm aware that it's a traditional type story, but I can't think of like where else I would have heard of it first, other than then. Yeah.
I feel like you must have maybe read it growing up at a younger age to have familiarity with the story because the Sleepy Hollow movie obviously
Hmm.
takes liberties. So like you've got to have more knowledge come from somewhere else.
Oh, actually, I think it's like a Disney short or something that like it's maybe even called The Tale of Ichabod Crane. I forget what it's called, but maybe from that.
Oh, that's quite. I can picture the animation of that. It's quite very old school Disney hand drawing, over the
Yeah,
top. Yeah,
I feel like maybe we had that on VHS growing up, something like that. Yeah.
good shout. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay. Well, it's now modern time at a high school in Sleepy Hollow. Ian Matthews has recently moved to Sleepy Hollow and is trying to fit in, but he's trying way too hard. A young girl named Katie is walking towards the school with a box of Halloween decorations that are knocked out of her hand by Brad. And this is Katie's jealous and very possessive ex-boyfriend. We'll get into the characters in a minute. Let me just finish this couple of sentences. Kate is annoyed with him, and Ian helps her pick up the decorations. He introduces himself to her, and after a brief chat, he offers to help her set up the Halloween dance that night, and she agrees. So here we get the three major players set up. Now, one of the things I think that's first of all, I think they're all really interesting characters outside of Katie. Ian is not your standard. I've just joined a school and I'm a nerd and everybody thinks I'm stupid. Like he is trying really hard to be smooth and suave, and he's got a little bit of charm about him in a sort of self-deprecating way that I think is really different for a character. Rad is a written character who is, I think, dangerous. Like I think you're seeing the signs of someone who is future in life going to be a dangerous human being.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But I did also notice some of the hairstyles in this. I don't know why, like just super 90s. Like it's crazy. Like just really dates it compared to how, like modern hairstyles and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, that's our introduction to everybody. Because Brad now comes over, offering to help her tidy up. She's mad, and Ian plays his hand here, mugging Brad right off. I was really, really impressed by that.
Hmm.
As he and Katie walk off, Brad is unimpressed and clearly not happy about their potential friendship. Inside, the decorations for the dance are going up. Katie and Ian are talking about his time in Sleepy Hollow so far when Brad arrives calling her babe and offering to help. He still thinks they're an item or thinks that she should be. And annoyed, she reminds him that they're not a couple anymore. And he then says this line, I'll say when we don't go out anymore. And I was like, fuck!
Get that sort of stuff will get you cancelled these days.
Insane, like writing of a character. Ian now accidentally drops the decoration on Brad's head, and Brad threatens Ian and tells him, look, stay away from Katie. Katie tells, look, don't let them bother him, and she asks him to save a dance for her when they're at the dance that night. So, do you know what I mean? He's got the moves. He's got the moves. He's impressed Katie. Good on him. That night, Ian arrives at the dance where he meets Katie, and they're both coincidentally somehow wearing colonial era costumes. I mean, what are the chances?
What are the chances?
Ian gets a little nervous when they see Brad walking by dressed like a pirate, but they end up dancing together. Katie and Ian, that is not Brad and Ian. That would have been a twist.
Been quite a twist.
As the night goes on, Ian's personality wins over Katie and more classmate. It turns out he's likable and funny, and people enjoy his company. What a clever way to write a character. It's just being a normal person that people like.
True.
Everyone but Brad, except he doesn't like Ian, and Ian spots him harassing Katie again. Ian intervenes, and it turns into a pushing match, leading him to go outside for a potential fight. And again, I'm sitting there going, well, all right, this is where Ian is proven to be a coward, and Brad humiliates him, and everybody laughs and all of that. No! Up to outside, and Ian has his fists up. Ian is ready for the fight, and I'm like, what is going on?
Go on, Ian.
But Brad says, look, actually, there isn't going to be a fight. Instead, he starts to recount the legend of Sleepy Hollow and how back in the late 1700s on Halloween night, Ichabod Crane got lost trying to find his way home. Ichabod should have gone left, but he went right instead. And instead of getting to the Bridge of Souls, which is the one bridge the Headless Horseman could never cross, he went deeper into the woods. Brad now tells them they have a tradition in Sleepy Hollow. When someone new shows up, they need to be initiated. Go to the bridge and bring back the Headless Horseman's pumpkin. He gets the pumpkin and they'll leave him alone, or he and Ian will fight after all. Ian says, look, I don't believe in ghosts, but I will get that pumpkin. But I was like, oh man, he's walked right into this one. But no, he talks to Katie and acknowledges and says, look, I know this is stupid and I know it's a prank, but I'm going to play their game because it's just easier to do that. And I was like, oh, well, I really appreciate that he's not stupid to not realize this is clearly a setup.
That's really rare in these shows, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Ian heads into the woods and ends up at the fork, heading left but getting freaked out by the sound of a horse in the distance. He then finds the bridge and a pumpkin. It's a jack-o'-lantern, obviously, glowing green, which he looks inside. Again, loved it. He looks inside and it's a green glow stick. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's quite clever. I was like, of course, yes. Obviously, it's a prank, and Ian calls out to Brad. But then suddenly, the Headless Horseman appears and swings a sword at Ian. Ian runs in fear, falling to the ground and begging not to lose his head. Of course, this is Brad in a very elaborate costume. And Ian is humiliated, especially when Brad's friends arrive with Katie all laughing at him. Now, I've got so many thoughts on this scene. First, I want to say, fuck you, Katie. You didn't think maybe to call out to Ian? Like, were you being held hostage with a hand over your mouth?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, got her there.
And I thought it might be better here to reveal that actually she was in with Brad and she had been part of this overall prank and she was laughing too. I feel like it might have made more sense.
That'd been quite a neat twist. But I thought that like pretty solid prank on the whole. Like you said, elaborate costume, and they got him pretty good. So like, I don't condone what they're doing. You know, obviously bullying him and whatnot, but like they did a pretty good job in terms of like pranking him. Just give him a little bit of props.
I actually 100% agree as well. And I'd say to Ian, you kind of walked yourself into this as well. You might know it is a prank, but your response to Ian, Brad should have been, nah, I'm all right, mate. You crack on. I'm off home. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
simple as that. But you still chose to go this long this way with it.
yeah,
I also want to give props that Brad not only did the elaborate costume, but apparently knows how to ride a horse and rides a horse well.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's some dedication. I can't hate on that.
All right, Brad threatens Ian not to mess with him and demands that Katie come with him, but she chooses to stay with Ian, and Brad and his goons leave with a final warning about the real headless horseman. All that's done, Ian kind of recovers and he's kind of like, hey, you know what? I'll walk you home. And they kind of laugh it off, and Katie's still cool with him and all that. Like, I liked it because it was like, you know what? All that happened was Brad got to embarrass Ian. That was it. Like, there's no wider repercussions of this. And like, Ian kind of just brushes himself down and says, hey, cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly.
But as they head off in the distance, we see the actual headless horseman. Katie and Ian end up running into a man dressed in, coincidentally, colonial clothing and riding a white horse. He, seeing how they're dressed, thinks they're of his time, so is very polite and friendly to them, but quite clearly by his pale complexion. Now, this is a running theme in Are You Afraid of the Dark? Whenever they want to show us a ghost, it's just like really pale and it's been lit in a way so they're really bright.
Exactly. Yeah. I took note of that for the same reason. The man is caked in cheap Halloween store makeup, and it's like, if you can't see that's a ghost, then there's something wrong with you.
Of course, he asks for directions to the Bridge of Souls, and confused, Ian tells him to take the left turn. The man thanks him and rides off, introducing himself on the way out as Ichabod Crane. Obviously confused, they turn to ask more questions, but Crane has now disappeared. Move on though, because Ian gets Haiti home, and there's actually a cute scene together here on the doorstep, which one of those where it's like with a bit more time, this could have been an expansive, sort of fun little story.
Yeah.
Ian heads back to the school alone, though, to get his bike. En route, though, he's tormented by the horsemen. But arriving at the school, he figures it's just what's called a Brad continuing to play more pranks them. But when he gets to his bike, he doesn't have the key for it. Now you might think, okay, well, isn't that just a coincidence? No, actually, it's cleverly done. The key was in his coat pocket. He took his coat and put it on Katie because she was cold. How clever.
Yeah. It's clever.
But thankfully, Kate is here because she came after him, obviously, to give him back his jacket, raced after him fairly quickly to give him back his jacket. And I was like, that's cool as well. Together, they start to head home when Katie points out the shadow of the horseman cast up the wall on the side of the school. Ian, thinking it's Brad, demands he leave them alone or fight. Of course, this isn't Brad, and the real headless horseman emerges from the shadow and swings his sword at Ian, who ducks. What we have here is one of the better effects and more impressive introductions of the big villain of the piece, I think. From the shadow being cast, which looks great in itself, to the horseman emerging from that shadow, the wall, I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, me too. It'll look really good. Sure.
Of course, realizing it's the real horseman, the pair are forced to run, who pass Brad, who is still in his costume, but now sees the real horseman and is frightened by him. I don't really get this. Is this supposed to be Brad getting his comeuppance? Because to me, it's like, well, no, everyone else is running for their life. Of course, Brad's going to be scared. I would have been a bit risque, and I might have focused on Brad peeing himself or something.
Yeah, just to go that a little bit more because yeah, they're
Yeah.
all getting the same treatment as him, so it's not really enough. Yeah.
So basically, Katie and Ian realize that they changed the story. By saving Ichabod, they basically made it so the horseman is now targeting them. Uh, don't think about this too much. It's as simple as that. Just don't, because there's so many questions around about this, that I'm like, I don't, whatever. But I'm like, you know what? Okay, it all makes sense on a surface level. Fine.
Yeah.
Haiti says they have to play the story out and cross the Bridge of Souls. And there's a tense chase, and eventually Ian makes it across as the headless horseman turns into flames and vanishes. Big dramatic music, slow motion, close call, all of that, except for one thing. That again, this is where I refuse to just let the show have its way. Which is it? Is after both of them, or is just after Ian? Because
Mm.
she doesn't get across the bridge, so why doesn't he just take her head?
Yeah. No, got him there for sure.
So Kate and Ian are overjoyed, but they're disturbed by Ichabod, who has returned and is heading back. And he claims he came back because he lost his way again. This time he thinks he should take the right turn after all, which should set things straight. Katie agrees with Ichabod's decision, and Ichabod leaves them, telling them to take care and beware headless horsemen, and wishes them a happy Halloween. I found this part very confusing. So it's sort of like suggesting that Ichabod knows that he has to replay his fate regardless, but he does it in like a winky way where he's like, I should take the other route, shouldn't I? And stuff like
Mm,
that. And I'm like, no, this would work better if as they walk back through the woods, they run an Ichabod, basically repeating the cycle over and over again. And
mm.
this time they choose to tell him to go the opposite way, which would add a dark layer to the sort of the fact they have to make a decision that results in Ichabod constantly dying, but they have no choice. But having Ichabod come along and wink at the camera and being like, oh, well, this will set things. I thought it was just weird.
Yeah, I agree. It is weird, the fact that he's like aware of it, kind of thing. It'd make more sense if he
Yeah,
just wasn't aware of it, and they obviously know what his fate is going to be. So, like maybe they attempt in some way to intervene, but they can't. That's just what happened, you know. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
After Ichabod has left in the clearing of another part of the woods, the headless horseman is shown to be fine, basically, and laughs and rides off to the night. And again, I'm like, wait, so, I mean, I don't know how well this was explained in the original story anyway, but like, can he not touch you now? Like, once you've got to the Bridge of Souls, does that make you like invincible? Is it like an invincibility cheat? That means you no longer can be touched?
Yeah, not sure.
But there we go. That's the story. And Tucker ends it with all the votes going his way, and he's the new member of the Midnight Society. And that starts off season 3 with episode 1, The Tale of the Midnight Ride. Look, folks, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but I enjoyed it more from how the characters were written and the different twists on them. I think it's got some cool visuals, and I think as a tribute to a classic ghost story, it's got some moments. It looks nice. It's set outside mostly as well, so there's a lot of night filming and stuff like that, so it's lit well. I think there's some visual tricks that are very clever, but ultimately, as a scary story, a frightening story, and what's in it, I just don't care for it.
Yeah, I think Tucker played it fairly safe. It's a but it's a solid opener for season 3. Like I said before at the beginning, it doesn't do much for me because it's just one of those typical stories been played out way too many times, seen it done to death kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as like a concise version of the story, like in such a short runtime for like teens, I think it keeps your attention and delivers the short story. That maybe would be fun to watch around Halloween time. Has that kind of vibe about it. But yeah, pretty basic, but not bad by any means.
Middle of the road, there we go. I just have one last thing I want to mention, and basically, it's a massive flaw in the Midnight Society's voting system. So, at the beginning of this episode, basically, Gary told us that Tucker had to join no matter what. He said, "Oh, I had to bring him, otherwise I'm not allowed to come." But what if he goes back after this and says, "Oh yeah, well we voted him out. He can't continue to come." Aren't his
Hmm.
parents? The parents aren't just going to be like, "Well, that's fine then." The idea is that Tucker's going to be attending regardless. Now they wanted him with Gary, so that makes the voting in the end fucking pointless. Basically, Gary blackmailed everyone into letting Tucker in.
Gary's using his power as the leader. You know, he's gone to his head a little bit there, maybe.
Some of the best moments around the Midnight Society involve Gary and Gary's reaction. And thankfully, thanks to Tucker being in this, actually, the thing, folks, I actually don't mind Tucker as a character as this goes on, as it adds a new layer to the interactions around the camp of having someone who's a bit more abrasive. Like I said, particularly as Frank kind of died away from that character as time went by.
Also, just to throw something out randomly, talking about Gary, I watched another video that was talking about some trivia surrounding Are You Afraid of the Dark, and apparently in the first few episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark, Gary has glasses. Obviously, that's what he wears, but he has lenses in them, and during this couple of episodes, you can see the fire reflected in the lenses, but in subsequent episodes, they just took out the lenses because they got tired of the effect of having the the fire reflected in his glasses. So I think I haven't actually gone back and looked closely enough, but apparently now he doesn't have lenses in his glasses, so it might be one to look out for.
We will when we get to our next set of recording. I will definitely be looking out for that. Yeah, I can see you. I can see the problem with having to do fire reflecting in the glasses long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, better stuff we can make life easier. But there we go. That is episode 1, The Tale of the Midnight Ride of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Got any thoughts you know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.